Hello everyone, and welcome to Lesson 23.3A. I've entitled this video, The People of Southern Africa. This video is going to cover pages 710 to 715. The people of the region. The population of Southern Africa is overwhelmingly black African. The largest white minority is in the country of South Africa, where whites represent 10% of the population. In almost every other country, whites and Asians make up less than 1% of the population. The region's black African population is made up of many different ethnic and culture groups. Question number 1. What is the population of Southern African countries overwhelmingly comprised? Of black Africans. Question 2. What percentage of the country of South Africa's population is white? About 10%. Question 3. What percent of the rest of Southern African countries is either white or Asian? Less than 1%. Population patterns. Southern Africa's countries vary widely in population. Fewer than 2 million people live in the small countries of Lesotho and Swaziland. South Africa, which surrounds both of them, has the region's largest population, about 49 million. Population depends heavily on geography and economics. For example, Botswana and Namibia are much larger than Swaziland and Lesotho, but their populations are only slightly larger. Most Botswana, as the people of Botswana are called, live in the northeast, away from their country's desert areas. Similarly, most Namibians live in the northern part of their country, away from the arid south and west. South Africa and Angola are about the same size. South Africa, the region's most industrialized nation, has 3 times as many people. In both countries, most people live in cities. Angola's rural areas are thus much more thinly populated than rural areas in South Africa. Question number 4. What is the most populous country in Southern Africa? That is South Africa. Question 5. What are the 2 main factors that impact population in Southern Africa? Geography and economics. Question 6. In Botswana and Namibia, what area of the country do their people tend to avoid? They tend to stay away from their country's desert areas. Question 7. In South Africa and Angola, where do most people live? They live in cities. Mozambique, which is slightly larger than Namibia and much smaller than Angola, has a population greater than those 2 countries combined. Most of Mozambique's 23 million people are engaged in farming, mainly along the fertile coastal plain. Question number 8. How do most of the people living in Mozambique make their living? Through farming. Zambia is twice as big as Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe, with a population of about 12 million, has only 2 million fewer people. Both countries are largely rural, with only about 1/3 of their people living in cities. Large parts of Zambia are thinly populated. Question 9. In Zambia and Zimbabwe, where do most people live? Most people live in the country. They live in the rural areas. Malawi is just 1/3 the size of Zimbabwe and 1/6 the size of Zambia, yet it exceeds both in population. With some 16 million people living in an area roughly the size of Pennsylvania, it is the region's most densely populated country. On average, every square mile holds more than 250 people. Question number 10. What is the most densely populated country in Southern Africa? The most densely populated is Malawi. Surprisingly, Malawi is also Southern Africa's most rural nation. Only 20% of its people live in cities. Its small size and large rural population mean that most of its farms are small. Most farm villages are not able to produce much more than what they need. As a result, Malawi is the region's poorest country. The average Malawian earns less than $350 a year. Question 11. What is the most rural country in Southern Africa? Malawi. Question 12. What type of farmers are most of the people living in Malawi? They are subsistence farmers, just making enough to feed themselves. Question 13. What is the poorest country in Southern Africa? It is also Malawi. Ethnic and culture groups. Africans are not a single people. Southern Africa is home to many ethnic and cultural groups who speak several different languages. One group, the Shona, make up more than 80% of the population of the country of Zimbabwe. South Africa's 9 million Zulu make up that country's largest ethnic group. More than 7 million Xhosa also live there, as do the Koko. Some 4.5 million Sangha people are spread among the countries of South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. About 4 million Swana from the major population group in Botswana, a similar number of Ovibunda and 2.5 million Mbunda make up approximately two-thirds of Angola's population. A smaller group, the Ambo, live in Angola and Namibia. About half of Namibia's people belong to this ethnic group. The San, a nomadic people, live mainly in Namibia, Botswana, and southeastern Angola. The Chua are Malawi's largest ethnic group. Groups like the Chua, Sangha, Ambo, and San illustrate an important point about southern Africa's history. When Europeans divided the region, they paid little attention to its indigenous people. The Chua and their territory, for example, were split among 4 colonies. Similarly, the area inhabited by the Sangha were divided by the borders between South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique. Question number 14. How can we tell that Europeans did not care about the people of Africa when they divided the regions into colonies? Well, they didn't divide the colonies into the way that the groups of people in Africa had lived. They split these groups up and they used borders that they cared about, and they didn't care about the way that the African peoples had been living prior to them coming. So you can definitely tell that by the way that these ethnic groups have been split into different countries today. Religion and languages. Southern Africa's colonial past has also influenced its people's religious beliefs. In almost every country, most of the people are Christians. Christianity was introduced to the region during the colonial era by Christian missionaries. In Angola, however, nearly half the population continues to hold traditional indigenous religious beliefs. Traditional religions are followed by large numbers of people in Namibia and Lesotho, too. In Zimbabwe and Swaziland, a blend of Christianity and traditional religious beliefs is followed by about half the population. Swaziland, Zambia, Malawi, and Mozambique also have large Muslim populations. Most of Mozambique's Muslims live on the coast, where contact with Arab traders led long ago to the introduction of Islam. Immigration from Asia explains Zambia's Muslim population as well as its large Hindu minority. And now we can answer a couple of questions. Question 15. How did colonialism impact the religion of the Western African countries? Well, a lot of times when these other cultures came to these places in Africa, they brought with them missionaries. Question 16. For those who are not Christians, what belief do many of them have in the Western African countries? Many of them have their traditional indigenous religious beliefs. And you can see on this map here, C stands for Christianity and I stands for Islam. But a lot of places you see that IR, that means those indigenous religious beliefs, those more traditional ones that aren't labeled by like Christianity or Islam or Hinduism or Judaism. Question number 17. What is the next largest religion in the Western African countries after Christianity and those traditional religious beliefs? The next religion is Islam. Question 18. What religion was brought to Southern Africa by Asian immigrants? They did bring Islam, but they also brought the Hindu religion, Hinduism. Portuguese remains the official language in Angola and Mozambique. English is an official language in most of the former British colonies. Its use, however, is mainly limited to official and business communications. Nowhere is it widely spoken by the people. Instead, most speak indigenous languages. South Africa has 10 official languages besides English. Zambia has 7. Life in South Africa. As in other regions of Africa, life differs from city to countryside. Many rural people continue to follow traditional ways of life. At the same time, urban and economic growth are challenging and changing many of the traditional ways. Urban growth and change. The rapid growth of some cities has strained public utilities. Those are services such as trash collection, sewage treatment, and water distribution. Luanda, for example, has had many problems providing enough clean water for its many people. Outbreaks of cholera and other diseases have resulted from drinking polluted water. The region's cities have a mix of many ethnic groups and cultures. An example is Johannesburg, where the wealth from nearby goldfields helped build one of the most impressive downtowns in all of Africa. Outside the central city are the white neighborhoods, where about 20% of the city's population live. Some black South Africans have moved into these neighborhoods since the end of apartheid. Most, however, live in townships at the city's edge. These areas often have no electricity, clean water, or sewage facilities. Most of the region's large cities have shantytowns. Johannesburg's role as a mining, manufacturing, and financial center has attracted people from around the world. Every black ethnic group in southern Africa is present as well. The white community is mainly English and Afrikaner. Large Portuguese, Greek, Italian, Russian, Polish, and Lebanese populations also live there. Indians, Filipinos, Malays, and Chinese live mainly in the townships. At least 12 languages are heard on city streets. And now we can answer some questions. Let's go with question number 19. What are public utilities? These are services that are provided to people to have a better standard of living, such as trash collection, sewage treatment, and water distribution. So things, if you look at these icons down here, things that we in America just expect to have, but in some of these places in Africa, they are few and far between or strained because of the big population booms. Question 20. What is the rapid growth of cities in in Southern Africa causing? That should say Southern Africa on that worksheet. In Southern Africa, well, it's causing a strain on the public utilities that they have to offer. Question number 21. What is a huge contrast between the white neighborhoods of Johannesburg versus the townships of the city's edge? Well, those white neighborhoods have the public utilities you would expect, but those townships on the city's edge many times have no electricity, clean water, or sewage facilities, and that, of course, can lead to disease. Question number 22. What is the most influential and populated city in southern Africa? That is Johannesburg. Family and traditional life. People who move to the cities must adjust to new experiences and a different way of life. In the countryside, traditional ways of life remain strong. There goes my cat getting excited. Rural villages are often small, consisting of perhaps 20 or 30 houses. Building materials, which vary by ethnic group, include rocks, mud bricks, woven sticks and twigs packed with clay, and thatch, which is straw or other plant materials used to cover roofs, as you can see pictured here on the right. In many cultures, all the people in a village are related by blood or marriage to the village's headman or chief. Men often have more than one wife. They provide a house for each wife and their children. Growing food crops is the main economic activity. Many families raise cattle as well, mainly for milk and as a symbol of wealth. Question number 23. How are homes often built in rural areas of southern Africa? Well, the building materials vary, but they can include basic materials like rocks, mud bricks, sticks, twigs, and thatch. Which leads us to the next question. What does the word thatch mean? Thatch is straw or other plant materials that are used to cover the tops of your homes, as you can see pictured here. Number 25. In the rural areas of southern Africa, how is the village headman or chief an important part of the community? Well, he often is the person that everyone is kind of related to. He has more than one wife, and he does provide a house for each wife and his children. Very interesting. Question number 26. What is the main economic activity for people in the rural areas of southern Africa? Their main activity is growing food crops. Question 27. What are two reasons why rural people in southern Africa have cows? And this may seem like an obvious answer, but one, of course, is mainly for the milk. But two, if you have a cow or cattle, it is a symbol of wealth. So it's kind of like your way of saying to everybody else, look at me, I'm well off in this part of the world. People in the countryside practice subsistence farming, growing the food they need to survive. Artwork sometimes provides a family with a source of cash. Wood and ivory carvings are art forms that are generally practiced by men. Pottery making is usually a woman's craft. In some cultures, both men and women make baskets. They sell the products in cities or at periodic markets, open-air trading markets held regularly at crossroads or in larger towns. And you can see a couple of those pictured here on the right. In recent times, more and more men have been leaving their villages to work at jobs in cities or mines. Although the money they send home helps support their families, this trend has greatly changed village life. Many villages now consist largely of women, children, and older men. Women have increasingly taken on traditional male roles in herding, family, and community leadership and other activities. Question number 28. We've had this word many, many times this year. What is subsistence farming? That is growing just the amount of food you need to survive. You don't grow a ton of food to sell for money. You make enough food to feed you and your family. 29. What are periodic markets? These are markets that are held in open air trading, where they are held regularly at like bigger cities or at crossroads, where they can sort of sell the products that they do have. And question 30. What trend is changing the village life in more recent times? More and more men have been leaving the villages to get better pay at jobs in the cities or in mines, and then they try to get that money sent back home to help support their families. But what that means is a lot of those younger men are not in the villages, and so some of those roles that used to be done in the village by the men are being taken over by some of the women in the villages. Well, thank you so much for watching. Before we go, I don't have a meme for you, but I do have this interesting layout of the different flags of Southern Africa. I think it's fun sometimes to see the different designs and color schemes used by countries and regions. So feel free if you want to pause the video, but definitely some of these flags are really cool designs. All right, well, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.